Welcome to the Leading Generations podcast from Antioch Bible Baptist Church in Gladstone, Missouri. Each week, Pastor Steve Doss shares an encouraging word on faith, family, or culture as we seek to live out our mission of leading generations to make disciples of Jesus Christ everywhere.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Leading Generations podcast. Our goal for this podcast is to help our church family live out its mission of leading generations to make disciples of Jesus Christ everywhere. It is the third Wednesday of the month, so we're tackling culture this episode. Unless your head has been in the sand, you've probably heard about the drama with TikTok. TikTok is a popular social media platform where users create, share, and watch short videos, often featuring music, dances, comedy, or other creative content. This social media platform has been threatened to get shut down multiple times due to information that is being stolen from it by the creators of the app and many other reasons. People were losing their mind about it getting shut down, and I get it for some because it is their source of income for them or part of their source of their income. But as I was sort of watching this drama unfold with TikTok, it got me thinking about social media. We live in a world that is saturated with social media. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, X, YouTube Shorts, right? The list could go on and on. In the United States, Instagram has over 143 million active users, accounting for 41.9% of the U.S. population. Snapchat has over 106 million users in 2024. The number of Facebook users is 250 million in 2024. Research tells us that over half of our teenagers spend more than 4 hours a day on social media. Some say they are on social media constantly, checking their phones, responding to snaps, those kinds of things. Now, before you adults start getting high and mighty about your youth using social media, the average adult in the United States uses social media over 2 hours a day. So as you can see, we're a lot of people on social media, a lot of people using it a lot of hours in the day. So as followers of Jesus Christ, we have to ask ourselves the question, what is our relationship with social media? Should we have it or not? Should we ever let our kids have it? Can any good come out of it? Ultimately, if we're going to have a biblical worldview of social media, we have to ask ourselves the question, does the Bible have anything to say about it? What does the Bible say about social media? Now, let's just be clear. Social media is not found in the Bible. Moses was not posting pictures on Facebook of the dead of the Red Sea crossing, right? Like, you've got to see what happened. He wasn't doing that. David didn't go live on YouTube right before he went into battle with Goliath. Daniel wasn't Snapchatting with people from the lion's den, right? That you don't find it in Scripture. The Bible doesn't speak directly to social media, but it does have a lot to say about how we should live our lives. So here's what I want to do to sort of help us think through this idea of social media. I want to give you a verse to think about that helps us to know how to live our lives in light of God, in light of Jesus, and a question to consider when it comes to social media. So I have verses for you to think about, and I have questions for you to consider. Before I do this, though, I want to say one more thing about social media. You need to know that social media is not neutral in your life. It is pushing you in one of two directions, toward Christ or away from Christ. In contrast, I would say your phone is more neutral. It's like a tool that can be used for good or evil, right? But it's just a tool. Your phone is just a tool that you use to stay in contact with people. It can be used for good or for evil. evil, whereas social media is different to me than our phones because the very way it is set up to feed our pride and narcissistic tendencies. Think about these platforms. They're designed with the interest of the owners of the platforms in mind, right? They are designed to be immersive and to reward those who look away for the least amount of time. You think about there's these ideas of streaks and how many likes you can get, how many hearts you can get. And again, the whole idea is to keep you coming back. I posted a picture of my parents' anniversary the other day, and part of you wants to keep going back to look and see the comments that were made and the people that liked it or loved it, right? And that's the point of social media is it keeps drawing you back. So social media is not neutral in the way that a phone is neutral. There's a book out there by a guy named Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation. I've heard about this book, and I rented it at the library. I was like 300th in line, and the time it came, I couldn't read it, so I had to do it again. Now I'm like 500th in line to read it, so I may just have to buy the book. But I was walking through our offices the other day, and I came across our elementary education director, Michaela, and she was reading the book. And so we were chatting about it. And maybe someday I'll have Michaela on the podcast here and she can share a little bit more about what she's learning from this book as far as helping our kids navigate this world that they live in. But so I borrowed the book from her. And after I borrowed it, I was flipping through it and just looking at some of the stats. And here's what he said in the book about social media. Social media use does not correlate with mental illness. He says this, it causes it. Social media use does not correlate with mental illness. It causes it. And what they found in their research, particularly in girls more so than boys. So what is he saying? It's not neutral. Right? Social media is not a neutral. Like the phone, social media is different. It's not neutral in how it interacts with our life. It is a piece of our culture that is influencing either towards Christ or away from Christ. So we have to come at social media then from a biblical worldview. We have to look at it through the lens of Scripture. So let me give you these verses and then a question to consider as you're thinking through your use and your involvement in this cultural thing that influences us called social media. The first verses that I would ask you to consider is Isaiah 43:7. And it says, you and I were created for the glory of God. So Paul, understanding what God said here in Isaiah 43:7 in 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, right? He just lumps everything in together. Do all to the glory of God. So here would be the first question then. Does social media glorify God? Does your use of social media glorify God? Does it make God look bigger to the people around you? Now I know you're like, well, make God look bigger. What are we talking about there? Well, picture the difference to me between a microscope and a telescope. A microscope makes something small look bigger, right? It takes small things, makes them look bigger. Whereas a telescope takes something that is so vast and it brings it into focus. When I'm thinking of glorifying God or magnifying God, asking this question, what we're saying is, does it take God and bring him into focus in your life and the life of the people you're engaging with in social media? Does social media glorify God? That would be the first question. The second verse is found in Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 and 38, where Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment in all of the scriptures? What is the one commandment that we should follow? And Jesus tells us that we're to love God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, all of our strength. So the question would become from Matthew 22, 37 and 38, does social media grow my love for God? I've heard this question before in another section of Scripture, but I think it would apply to this idea of, does it grow my love for God? Does it stir my affections for Christ? As I'm consuming social media, does it grow my love for Christ? Does it stir my affections for Christ? As I'm contributing to it, right? As I'm posting things on social media, does it grow my love for God, and does it stir my affections for Christ? The third verse that I would have you consider is Matthew 22:39. This comes right on the heels of loving God. Jesus says the second commandment is like the first. You should love your neighbor as yourself. So the question would become, does social media help me love others? Does it lead me towards people or away from people? Think about it in this way. If you were not following your neighbor on social media, okay, if you didn't know their political views and only knew them from your interaction in the neighborhood, would you treat them differently? Because you follow them on social media and you know their political views, or you know certain things that you may disagree with them on, does that cause you to treat them differently? But if you didn't know those things, right? Like if you just lived in the cul-de-sac with them, your interactions were on walks with your dogs, and you just talked to each other, would it cause you to treat them differently? I think we have to ask ourselves this question: does social media cause me to love and serve people better, or draw away from people? I think about the ways our church family loves people as I watch through social media. When somebody's going through a tough time and you watch it and people are praying for them and commenting to them about it. So it's a good way to serve people. I even think about in my own life. So my family bought for me a Blackstone for Father's Day this last year. And, I can grill. I'm okay. I'm not a master chef or anything like that, master griller. And so when I got the Blackstone, I started following guys on Instagram who do Blackstone cooking. And so now my feed is full of Blackstone recipes and how to clean your Blackstone. And so in a way for me, social media has been helpful to love and serve my family. It's been fun to cook on the Blackstone for my family, give Ruth a break from cooking. And then even our whole family would go out there and we would cook together. It just was sort of neat how it brought our family together. So that's a neat way where social media actually helped me serve my family better. I think about Matthew 5:16 that says, "Let your light so shine before others that they see your good works and glorify God." The way you love others on social media could be a light to the world. Another verse for you to consider is Philippians 4:8. It says this, "Finally, brothers," and that could be sisters, finally, brothers and sisters, "whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things." So here's a question then, based off that verse. Does social media make me think right about God and life? Does it make me think about things that are true and honorable and pure and lovely and commendable? The last verse that I would want you to consider is Matthew chapter 5, verses 29 and 30. This is found in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and he's talking about if you look on a woman to lust after her, you've committed adultery with her already in your heart. And he goes on right after that and says, if your eye offends you, pluck it out, right? If your hand offends you, cut it off. It's this idea of radical amputation when it comes to sin in our life. So the last question that I want you to consider is this: does social media lead me to sin? If it does, then I would encourage you, take it out of your life. Right? If it's not leading you towards Christ, if the influence is away from Christ, then I would encourage you to take it out of your life. Because if it's leading me to sin, then that's hurting my relationship with the Lord. I know the hard part of this is that idea of FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. If I'm not on social media, then I'm going to miss out. Well, Matthew 5:29 and 30 would say it's better to miss out in this life than to miss out on the next life. So let's make sure that we're going through and thinking through, does it lead me to sin? And if it does, then I should probably cut it out of my life. So I hope you've seen what I'm trying to help us here as we think through social media with a biblical worldview, is to take scriptures that maybe necessarily don't apply directly to social media, but they are how we are to live our lives. And so these can be the lens or the filter through which we think about social media. So I would challenge you to do this. First of all, think through your social media platforms with these verses and scriptures in mind. And maybe the reality is you need to get rid of some of them because they just don't help your relationship with Christ. And after you've done that layer, then go through your post and see how they line up with these verses and questions. As you're reading through, do your post grow people's love and your love for God? Are they serving others? Then go through who you follow and see how they line up with these verses and questions as well. Just a challenge for you to make this practical in your life and think through your role in social media. Thanks for joining us today. I hope this episode has been helpful to you in thinking biblically about social media. Next episode, we'll have part 2 of my interview with Pastor Bob. You won't want to miss it. I love you, church family. I pray you'll be encouraged to go out and live out our mission of leading generations to make disciples of Jesus Christ everywhere.